Okay, right. Our meeting is live streaming. All right, so there we go. We've got Aravind. How you doing? From India. Brilliant. And then we have Francisco from Jiva Spa at the Taj in Cape Town. Shani is from Charlotte, North Carolina, and she's got the word ready. And we have Francisco, who's excited. Jenny from Zenju in Belito, she's enthusiastic. Kajal from the Palms, divine. And then we have Samantha from Zambia. She's excited to gain some insight on staff issues. Alison from Cape Town. Hi, Alison. Sarita and Danae, welcome, lovely ladies. Excited. Lena from South Africa. Awesome to have you here. Karen says super excited from KZN. Siyanda is also from Zenju in Belito, and she's also excited. Okay, so who else do we have on here? Let's see, I've got some people in the waiting room. Okay, who else? Okay, Francisco is connecting back. And I'm going to record as well. Leandra's just got on. Brilliant. Oh, Cara's also on. Okay, so everybody, what you're doing in the meantime, so let me welcome you all again to an event or a coaching session that is hosted by Spa Professionals Guild. Welcome, welcome. We've got somebody very exciting to chat to us today. So I had the privilege of having a discussion with LeAnne. Can't remember, maybe 3 weeks ago, a month ago, somewhere around there. And what stood out for me in our discussion was that she has no staffing issues. In fact, normally the spa directors or spa managers ask me to meet on a weekend, and LeAnne was off. She was having fun with her family. And I said, wow, I'm so surprised that you're off on the busiest times. And she said, well, Marisa, I've got this all waxed, and her team go with the flow. And I said, right, we need you to come and just give us some of your tips and help and all the rest of it. But I think before I hand over to her, I think what's important is, can all of you go into the chat box and can you perhaps let LeAnne know, and everybody else, what is currently your biggest staff challenge? So I'm sure you have lots, but let's start with one. Okay, what your biggest staff challenge is right now, because then she can maybe look into it and talk into that as well. Okay. Lorato is saying, hello, darling, from Boho Garden Spa. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so Alison is saying lack of professionalism is her current biggest staff challenge. Okay, let's hear some more. Let's hear some more. Anna's saying meeting deadlines. Interesting. Okay. Any more? Any more? You all obviously here because you have staff challenges, assuming. In the process of staffing my spa. Okay, so that's interesting, Kajal. So you obviously don't want to make mistakes, right? And want to learn upfront, which is really the best way to do it, before you've even hired them, on how to have as little staffing issues as possible. Samantha is saying consistency in keeping standards, laziness, and not meeting of spa targets or not meeting of targets. Okay, interesting. And Aravind is saying, I'm facing the same issues as Alison, which is lack of professionalism. Okay, interesting. All right. Let's hear some more. Let's hear some more, everybody. I'm assuming those fingers are working overtime. I'm assuming that's what's happening here. They're all typing away, typing away. Okay, there's another one. Danae saying lack of professionalism and consistency. Okay, very interesting. All right. This is Lena telling us, she's on the iPhone, inconsistency and not meeting targets. Okay, so we're getting a bit of a, I don't know, a general theme here. Professionalism, consistency, not meeting targets. We've had laziness. We've had not meeting deadlines. I'm just checking what else. Okay, new spas poach my staff by promising them fantastic salaries and don't end up giving them what they promised. Interesting. Shani saying, from my conversations with members, recruiting and motivation to sell or upsell, own responsibility. Okay, interesting. Cara, do they land up coming back to you when they don't get what they were promised or not? What lands up happening then?
So what happened last year, I had 2 staff that were poached by a new spa. They ended up working there for 3 months, didn't get a salary after those 3 months. And then the 2 of them decided to open up a little business from home. I think that lasted about 6 months, and they ended up coming back and asking for their jobs back. But by that time, I'd already employed other therapists. And now the same has happened now. One therapist has been promised this amazing salary with all these perks, a little car. And yes, I'm waiting to see what happens from that.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. Okay, I can see LeAnne's making notes. I've also got some ideas to that, but that's great. Okay, who else? Who else? Any more? I'm sure you all have, there must be more to add here. There's lots of you on this call today. So are there any more of you with staffing challenges? Okay, so I think what we'll do while you're typing those in, I'll keep my eye on the chat box, and I'm sure LeAnne will too. But I think let's hand over to her. Let her start by telling us a little bit about herself. I loved her story and her history, and I'd like her to repeat it to all of you. And then perhaps she will start with her own journey of how she's got to the point of where she is. And then maybe, LeAnne, when you're done, you can open up to these kind of queries and we can have a little discussion around it. And now Michelle has come on. Hi, Michelle. She has said sick staff and personal issues are getting too much. Okay, so there's another one for you. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to you, LeAnne, and enjoy the session, everybody. We'll chat again in a minute.
Thank you so much, everybody. What a pleasure it is to be here this morning. I would have to say, you asked for that one word. In this forum for me, which happens rarely, I have to say nervous. I mean, this is quite the group of individuals we have, and I am extremely excited. But also, you know, from a peer-to-peer perspective, you know, this is a difficult subject to approach. It's a challenge for everybody. And as much as I can truly say that I don't have staffing issues, it also, I want to like put a little asterisk by that and say it has taken a long time for me to get to the place that I am today. There is not necessarily a quick fix, but I think some of the insights I have will hopefully support you guys in your questions today. A little bit more about me. So I have been around the globe a couple times. So I am a technician. I started as a massage therapist, 19 years old, in a very competitive market, in a fitness market, so more of a sports massage. Saw right away, I'm a driver, super passionate, wanted to be in leadership as soon as I got into the spa, but super love for technicians. You know, my best trait is that I know what it's like to be behind the table. Spent a good amount of my beginning 20s behind the table, but in middle management, assistant management, front desk, and grew from there. So traveled across the United States in 4 different states and locations. until ultimately we took a step back in our economy and I ended up going back to aesthetic school. So I'm a master esthetician, massage therapist, and I have officially worked in every role that you would have in the spa, from cleaner to front desk, in 18 years of experience. I did travel to Hawaii for quite some time, where I got my first opportunity to kind of step into that director role, and taking on the financial burdens of what it's like to run a spa. So therapist and technician at heart and in my soul and in my blood, but obviously director keeps me with a future that supports a family. So I see it from both ends. So super supportive from a therapist perspective, but also very much an art and a science brain. So that brought me to New Zealand, spent about a year in New Zealand, working in smaller operations, which was fantastic. And then ultimately back to America. So back to the States, to where I currently reside with Four Seasons. So I am the pre-opening director. I have opened 2 separate luxury properties, one for Marriott and one for Four Seasons now. This is my second. This is my fabulous office that you can see behind me. So for me, this is a super exciting opportunity to share 18 years of experience, the highs and lows, the ups and the downs, having left a location and returned again, and seeing the fruits of building those relationships transpire. So for me, a couple of things that I want to just start off with, when I look at what it means to make the statement that I have no staffing problems. I mean, it's a bold statement for sure. I think for me, I come from the mindset of succession. And when I was interviewing and assembling a team for this Four Seasons operation, you start with what is that going to look like? Because the benefit that I have is that I started from scratch. Not all of us, and me several times in my experience, when you inherit a team, you get what you get. The goods, the bads, the uglies, the highs, the lows. And I think that is a much steeper challenge for a lot of us. In this avenue, getting to be able to spend the time to be able to have those conversations and really truly recruit ultimately led me to where I am today. So it's a very unique opportunity to be able to say that I had the opportunity to recruit the team that I have, which is a special opportunity for sure, that not all of us having these struggles has the advantage of. So for me, succession based is a huge piece of how I built this operation. All of my candidates had to have a secondary plan in our interview process. So for an example, I would have several wellness attendants, our night cleaners, our day cleaners, asking them why they wanted to be a part of this team. Ultimately, not a lot of our cleaners want to be cleaners forever. Wellness attendants want to be wellness attendants forever. So it's very important to me in the interview process to have and learn what their plans were for their next year. Do they have a technical background? It was very important to me that majority of them did. I had several, specifically estheticians, more so than I could even possibly staff, looking at only hiring 2 master estheticians when I had probably 90 candidates that applied. And getting to turn away all of those really well sought after, really talented individuals, and having conversations with them about potentially being a coordinator or being a wellness attendant instead of an esthetician to start, and communicating those whys. Yes, it's not your dream job today. However, building that, if you will, kind of strong background in the full of the facility, and then leading them into a training program. One amazing thing that I had the opportunity to do here is start from within, and it, don't get me wrong, it is a ton of work for me and it's extra work, but it is creating an internship. So if I have a first year or second year esthetician, we require more, as much as 5 years of experience. And I find the right personality, like the person who is delved in, cares, fully bought in, passionate, just you love them as a person, and they just don't have the technical ability. Really having a passionate conversation about opportunity. So I've hired 4 separate wellness attendants as technical estheticians, with the promise and commitment from me to be able to create this program to where as we have turnover, as we have the natural progression of people moving on or moving up, they have the opportunity and commitment from me that I will work to get them into the next steps. So ultimately, I have 4 to 5 estheticians right now in my lineup that are grooming and coaching and training with my lead estheticians on any downtime. So that helps me keep labor steady, because even though we might not have a candidate or a guest in the moment, and we are looking for, are we going to cut that person or are we going to have them clean? For me to speak to my ownership and management about having this internal integrated internship program to where when my technical team members maybe aren't busy with a client, they're busy training my next estheticians, or have the opportunity to share their knowledge. So when we go back to the thought processes about continual education, having that be a passion factor, when you get to teach what you've learned to other passionate individuals, it just fuels this fire that the estheticians in our facility just love. They're passionate. That's why they're estheticians. I love talking about skincare. I love talking about ingredients. So when you put those people together, it ultimately creates a super positive environment. And that can be the same for massage therapy as well. When you have that one lead, that one rock star, fill that fire with more than just your clients. For us, it's really been about prioritizing our days, having it be when we haven't hit a slow season. How do you keep those individuals from getting antsy? How do you keep them from going to see what the neighbor down the street is paying or doing? If they have a commitment to their fellow team members, if they have a commitment and a buy-in to the success of their other staff, that peer-to-peer, they won't look quite as hard. At least in my experience, they tend to not have the time and the opportunity to continue to kind of look around. So it's a little bit of a different philosophy for sure. It doesn't work in every box for sure. It takes an enormous amount of time and energy from me. When you look at who's my number 2 is the same story. My number 2 ultimately wants my job, right? That is the game. And for her to get into that game is a commitment from me that I will do whatever it takes in terms of, is it one-on-ones? Is it coaching? Is it 5 minutes of, tell me what your why today is. Tell me what your why today is. Why are you here today? Why are you passionate today? Because everybody who interviews comes in with a super powerful why. I want to work here. I want to be here. And then it fizzles at times. So remembering, why did you want to work here in the beginning? When I have those one-on-ones with my entire team, and I do have one-on-ones with my entire team, they may span the time frame of 90 days, but I check in and sit down, whether it's for a coffee or a functional one-on-one, numbers, stuff that's potentially uncomfortable. I always make sure we go back to that why, keep a notebook of what that is, so that I can not only express financially what I need them to reach in terms of targets or numbers. It's a true fact-to-fact conversation, but there's also a big pull from an emotional perspective. We are emotional creatures. We feel more than what maybe most of our counterparts outside of our industry might not necessarily feel in an office environment. So remembering what those things are, when I bring those moments up, emotions can be raw at sometimes, when a technician maybe has been with you for a year or two, and maybe we're not as busy as we'd like to be coming off the pandemic, and we're trying to rebuild those businesses, refocusing, why did they go to school in the first place? Peppering in those conversations, I find to be extremely positive, even when they have some maybe more challenging conversations to take place when regarding targets, and having them be a support system. So if you have an internship program, or if you can implement kind of a peer-to-peer mentorship, support is a huge piece of why people don't necessarily move on. And also that support piece can lead to coaching and opportunities that don't just come from me telling people what to do and how it's got to be. It comes from each other, and kind of having that positive environment. When we go down the road of targets, for instance. One of the comments here was about targets and revenue, because we all have them. To hold on to my job, it's hitting those numbers, it's hitting those targets, and it's not something I love. I really could do without. Again, technician, love the lotion, love the product, not necessarily something that I thrive in, but it had to become a strength for me. I had to make it a strength for me, and sharing what I love and don't necessarily love about my role helps humanize myself with my team members, and working with them and creating conversations around, if we're looking at a target for an esthetician, if you have a SKU count, if you have a number driver, whatever that is for you in terms of your operation. For us, for instance, maybe we're looking at a percentage of. So if my percentages are 25% lower than what they should be, for me, it's a reinvestigation of, do they understand the product line? Do they know the products? Did I inspect what I expect? Did I take the time? Do I know that my estheticians know the products? Do I know that they're passionate? Or do the minute that they leave my office, they potentially go, I just hate this product. I don't like it. And am I letting them lead those conversations? So for me, it's more listening than it is speaking on a lot of avenues. For a specific example, I do have a master esthetician who doesn't like the product line that I opened with. So surprise, we've only been open about 90 days, 100 days, give or take. And I picked a line to compare to the concept, to be a part of this big global vision that just is seamless with every piece of marketing that I have. Great product, luxury end product, amazing. Just, it's not her thing. She just doesn't love it. So there's a lot of interesting conversations, because the products in the beginning, this conversation wasn't something that I was aware of in the first 60 days, and just not seeing any sort of movement when we are extremely busy. So you should see more revenue. We should see more product being moved and seeing it sit on the shelf. And then going back into that esthetician's room, laying on her table and having her take me through what don't you love? What is it that you don't love? And then having an open dialogue of, is it because of the product? Is it the protocols? Is it the education? Like, for me, ultimately, all of these conversations are going to come back to the why, because the product that she is passionate about, the words just flow. They just flow. She's not selling, she's educating. And I think ultimately, if you have your staff just a part of the conversation, if you have the ability to have them have input, again, it goes back to that ownership piece. If they feel as though they're invested in your location, they own a voice. To me, what I've seen in the last 5 years of the 2 separate luxury properties that I've opened, which is the same clientele and the same staffing positivity, is they all have a stake in the game. And it's our conversations as a whole. And I know it's a difficult, potentially, thing to just make yourself vulnerable to, is to be able to have that leadership, pick the people who need to be your leads and let them have a voice. And then let them go back to the front lines and let them share their opinions, right, wrong, or otherwise. Let them be heard. Let them have some conversation. Let them drive what potential decisions. And it might be 1% of the decision, 1%. Don't get me wrong. I'm a control freak. Like, I definitely have the final say in everything. However, I absolutely enjoy and welcome people's opinions, people's thought processes. Go home on a Saturday and spend your time on TikTok, Instagram, feeds, stories, Pinterest. Show me what you came up with, because then there's just more investment into what your conversations may become when they get to the numbers, when they get to the conversations of why they're not performing. It's a different story. It gives me goosebumps, because it's hard to describe in this conversation, but the passion that changes within a person when it's the right person and they feel like they're part of your ownership. Going back to the conversation with the employees that went away from your business for a higher salary or the hopes of a better future, then opened their own business and then came back. For me, I've seen that too. I've had that happen too. And honestly, I've almost done that too. And I think for me, if those individuals potentially would have more investment into what they could control or at least contribute to in their environment, because if somebody's willing to be their own boss, they want control. They want to have a say. They want to be the ones that pick and choose and get to say what their schedule is, what their hours are, what their product is, maybe what their revenue is, and I think engaging in those conversations ultimately, even if it's just a conversation, it's giving them the opportunities to potentially say, you know what, we don't like these towels. I hate these towels. They're rough, they're scratchy. Can we look at to something else? Sure. What I would like you to do, I'm going to challenge you, is to come up with 3 ultimate options for towels. So put that work back onto them, let them go find it, let them bring it to you, and then have a realistic conversation. This one's too expensive. This one we can't source in our area. This one's a possibility. Let me take that, figure it out, go to ownership, find if it's a possibility. And if it's not, have an open-ended conversation of why it's not. So at least they had the buy-in and the understanding that they had the opportunity to share and invest. And if you do get to get those towels, oh my gosh, like now they're going to talk about it all day. Did you see my towel? Did you hear my towel? Like, I got a towel. Like, it seems silly. It really does. I know I sound strange, but it really does have a very powerful effect when they get to imprint their thought process and their expertise in an area. So long-winded, I understand that. I feel like I'm kind of talking to myself, which is a little odd, but I know you're out there. So for me, I think those are the things that have worked so successfully for me. One little piece in this environment I want to explain to it and why I say I have no staffing struggles. So in a unique market, so I've opened up 2 luxury collection properties within 7 blocks of each other in the last 6 years. So one was pre-pandemic, just super successful, 16,000 square feet, full fitness center, huge spa, 9 treatment rooms that were just luxury. Very, very nice. And then built the staff there, picked it, all grassroots, very boutique-y, so small, not a lot of support from a corporate operation. Just go out and find it. So LinkedIn, all your sources, LinkedIn, Indeed, Facebook, Instagram, stalking people on Instagram, finding out who's posting the most, go to the top accounts, find estheticians, type in estheticians, who's got the most followers in your radius, who's got the most looks, and hunt them. That's what I did, is went to them, got facials with them, told them what I was about, talked to them. It is a very aggressive mindset that I have. I have no doubt in that. And I prioritize that because ultimately those individuals make my job easier by far. So investing the time in that. And I built that staff. So when I built that staff, fast forward pandemic, move away, don't have that job anymore, come back to a new opportunity. I had cultivated a reputation and an environment to where they came to me. They sought me out when the job postings went up, and I had 24 massage therapists that I have known that have worked for me here and there in the last 5 years, give or take, when I was in this market in general. And I've come and gone from this market 5 times over 18 years. So I have a reputation here and there as different leadership and in different markets. So that is a benefit for me, absolutely. But they sought me out because of that kind of professional environment that I hold a very high bar to. And the luxury is that there were individuals who did come to me that I said no to because of their environments that they weren't as positive in or weren't as successful in. So the highs and lows of it is my staff ultimately was picked based off of my reputation of how I opened the last 4 spas in this market in the last 20 years, and having the advantage, if you will, of being able to speak to those moments of coaching. My lead therapist specifically sought me out. She's very stable, has a very successful clientele in a different spa and in a different market. And her main piece is the leadership. The leadership that you put forward is something to where you want to work for them. And from a me perspective, highs and lows in 18 years of professionalism. We've all had the bosses that just not loving, not having the greatest time with, that maybe don't inspire us, don't spend the time with us, or just all the time. Numbers, hard numbers. I don't necessarily want to perform for them. I do my job, but I don't love it. I don't love them. The people who inspire us in our lives could be professional, could be personal, could be somebody in school, could have been somebody in your church, could have been somebody in your family. Those are the people you want to strive for. Those are the people you want to go for. And I want to do, and I want to be there early. I'm going to stay late. I'm going to invest my time, deposit. Because when I come for that with withdrawal, it's most likely around numbers or attitude or professionalism. I can have a very short conversation, level up, checks and balances. So for me, I know I perform better when I love my leadership, and my leadership that invests in me and invests in my time and understanding my why just drives me. I am a very dedicated individual. I'm an Aries, if you can't tell already, very passionate about what I do and how I do it. But that's what inspires me. The leadership that just maybe 9 to 5, always pushing, doesn't want to hear my passion story, doesn't want to hear my why. They just want to see it on a P&L, just want to see it on top line revenue. I don't perform as well. So I take that essence within myself and I pivot that into my team, which ultimately has grown a very close-knit, but not cross the boundary, family, team, environment where we can really depend on each other that way. So long story long is that's my story of succession. And I hope there's some information there. I think if you're okay, we'll go back to the questions a little bit and I'll look at them a little bit deeper while we chat a little bit more.
Yes. So LeAnne, you scroll through the questions, but I just want to, in a nutshell, say something, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you've given us a really strong, but very hard to hear for some of us lesson. You've basically said, in a nutshell, that if you have staff issues, you got to look at yourself as the leader first.
100%.
Okay, so you've basically told us all, whatever your issues are, don't waste your time trying to fix your staff. Change yourself. Change how you are dealing with the staff. Change how you are inspiring or not inspiring them. Change. Am I right? Is that the message?
100%. And let me clarify why I say that. Because I am that person. Because when I was a 20-something and I'm now almost a 40-something manager, I was that person. I was the person who had to be the boss. I need to tell you how it is. I need to tell you what your numbers are, because I thought that's how you've been. That's what I thought. That was the leadership above me. That was the guys in the suits. That was how it was. And, ruling with an iron fist, or it's my way or the highway, or you do what I say. And, and I'm not a tyrant, but at the same time, it was that mentality. I had no time to listen to you. I'm too busy. I have too many things. And I had a very realistic conversation with a great mentor who was like, that mirror got flipped around and was put into my face and said, until you open up and until you understand that you need to lead from the back, there will always be problems. And I was like, all right. And it did. It's taken me 10 years. 10 years, every day is a new day of challenges, to really say, stop, listen, because I'm a talker. So I need to hear what they're saying, validate what they're saying, let them have a true voice in the room, and then truly take that information. Because there's times where I'm like, la, 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 la. Like, I have no time for this. Like, again with the text messages. I don't, but I do understand in my own voice, in my own head, where I'm like, listen, there is a reason employee X is saying these things. There's a reason they're calling out for you. They're calling out for a reason. You know, there's a reason she doesn't want to come into work today. Outside of she's called out 16 times in the last 2 months. What is going on? You know, and having that realistic conversation, rip that Band-Aid off and have that, is it me? Is it me? Is it something I'm doing? Is it your schedule? Did I change your schedule and you now hate it, but you're scared of me? So you won't come and talk to me, you know? And it's that kind of reflection that has gotten me to the point where the team that I have is so strong, so strong. Like they will come to me and be like, we're going to tackle this bear that is LeAnne when you interrupt her. But at the same time, they're soft and they're gentle and they're respectable to the conversations that we have because they allow them the opportunity of freedom.
Wow. So I've got a very similar story to share as yours. And when I first went into my very first management role in a company, I'm not going to say it now because we're going live on Facebook, but I used to be nicknamed Cruella de Vil. That was my nickname.
Yep, absolutely.
And I must tell you that I really couldn't keep staff. So we made our numbers. That was one good thing. We always made target, but I could not keep my staff. And I kept blaming it on the people. And today I have endless amounts of people asking me, how are your staff so happy? Why is your team so happy? Why is every spa that you go into work with so happy? And it's because that has changed exactly your story, 360 degrees. I'm no longer Cruella, thank heavens. I am now some call me their mom, their sister, their guardian angel, their lifesaver, I have all sorts of words that I get called now. And I can really say, and 100% agree with you, and from personal experience, that you've got to look within before we turn around and say, right, how do we change the staff?
Absolutely. And I mean, it's so hard, guys. Like it's so hard. There is a vulnerability there that, you know, it is a little bit easier when you get to start from scratch, right? So if you get to walk into an opportunity and start fresh, you get to create whoever you are, you know, and who you are as a leader, who you are as a person, you know. So when you have that ability, it's a little bit easier. Now that you have a sustainable staff who potentially does or doesn't know you, I mean, even today, you get off this call, set a mindset, you know, how am I going to be approachable? You know, is it that you don't have to do stuff necessarily? You don't have to go buy people coffee. You don't have to do things to like bribe them into liking you. It's just truly having a conversation of how are you doing today? No, truly, how are you doing today? Call them into your office and they're going to go, I got to go to her office. And then sit down and go, how was your weekend? And don't talk about anything that has to do with work. You know, just spending that 1 minute, 10 minutes, 5 minutes of getting to know that person. And then when they leave, and then when you call them back again in a different conversation, it's shocking the amount of change you can see in a person, their aura, their environment, the way they chat, the way they share. I'm not a sharer. There's very little things that I share about my personal life, and I do that on purpose. However, I am a consistent listener to where they feel like they know me because I spend so much time listening to them. And there's little things that I share here and there about my personal life and my family. But it's really not about me. It's not about them knowing me. It's not about them being there. I don't share my Instagram. Like they're not on my social media, but they know who I am because I spend the time to get to know who they are. And I feel like that's the investment. Like what I said, when I come to them, and I come to them about numbers. I come to them about dates, times, calling offs, not showing up. There's a different environment in that conversation because there's a different brand of communication and loyalty that they feel like they're letting me down, you know. And if they are, I let them know that, you know. And then we have different conversations. You know, not everybody is going to be this bought in, hooray, get on the wagon train, but a good amount of them will be. And that's the part that's just, it's such a unique environment, and it's so happy. Like truly, I could take my iPad out right now and take it around the spa and ask them, Do you love your job? And truly, this is the true group of individuals who are so passionate and just love where they work. And it's not about me, it's about the environment you create as a whole. Because I spend very little time out there. I spend most of it in here typing away. But they have created, in essence, their own cultivated team because of that leadership of allowing them to have conversations, mimicking what you put forward. So if I approach, then they approach each other that way. If I'm, then they approach each other that way. You are that voice and you are that leader. If I come in grumpy, can tell you right now, my 4 coordinators are going to be grumpy because they emulate what I put out. If I come in, wee, which is not my personality, they level up and they're like, hi, 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 hi. And it's a mirror. It's fascinating to me because I've done it on purpose a couple of times just to like play it out where I'm like, and see how their body language changes. They kind of cripple in and change. And then if I come in and I'm like, hi guys, how are things? They're, hi, how are you? It's, you give what you put out.
It's amazing. So I've got a quite an important question. So let's say you have this amazing team like you do right now, and somebody becomes a rotten apple because they lose sight of their why, or they have family trauma, that they happen, the rotten apples happen. How do you approach that? What would be your best?
Sure. That's a great question. I've actually had it happen within the last 120 days. So not all of them are great. For me, the conversations don't change. I think the same essence of what I said, I still communicate, so you have an instance where you have to have a sit down and you have to follow your protocols, your policies and procedures. Let's say we have somebody who doesn't show up, first thing the next morning, it's a conversation to check in first, human to human. How are you doing? Truly, I want to know how you're doing because I'm concerned. I'm concerned that we had this situation take place, and I truly want to know that you're okay. And when I know that you're okay, normally what takes place is some sort of emotion. There is a why behind what they're doing and why they're doing it. And if you truly open up and be vulnerable with them and allow them the comfortability to be able to speak freely, you'll find out what that is. I've had people tell me that they didn't like the way I spoke to them. They didn't like my tone. They didn't like how I carried myself, and they thought I yelled at them. If you're that comfortable to be able to tell me to my face that you think that you don't like my tone or that I yelled at you, and that's the comfort you have in that one-on-one basis, it allows me the opportunity to then apologize and say, in that moment, I literally have 1,000 excuses to why I was maybe short, because I have 1,000 things that I have to do in that moment, but it is a pure reflection of that one conversation. It was move the water bottles from here to here. That's it. But it was taken as the worst conversation, so having it be an open-ended conversation, feel out what their whys are. And at the end of the day, if the bad apple continues to be the bad apple, cut that tie because it will infest the rest of your bushel. So for me, it becomes a very clear, crisp conversation that this is no longer the right place for you to be, and it's not necessarily a PIP. I work for a very large corporation. I work for 4 Seasons, and the conversations are very crisp and to the point. Here's the reason, here's what's happening, here's the why. There is no dancing around. I don't ignore you. We have a very real to real, parent to child, if you will, conversation of what's not working, what's working, what's not working. I'd like to see all of these working things. You're great at this. You're great at that. I love this. I love that. So pour on that love. Constructive criticism, outcome, expectation. If they don't do those 3 things, bye, next. And what will ultimately happen, and what truly has happened, is the people who are watching you, the rest of that bushel, who know that you have a bad apple, watch you do that. Watch you go, here's what I said, now I'm executing. Here's what I said, now I'm executing. All of them go, yep. And they bought in a little bit more. They leaned in a little bit more because ultimately they all know you have a bad apple, and they know that person's taking advantage of the situation, circumstance, or whatever it is. Might be their time. And they just don't have the voice or the power to be able to come to you to say it, or just don't want to. Some people don't like that confrontation. So ultimately, your choices with that bad apple, your choices with that person who doesn't show up, who doesn't perform, who's not doing their revenue, that has far more impact on your goods than it does that one bad apple. And if you let that continue, if you let that fester, you will have a bumpy road in your entire organization until you make it right. And that for me, so a bad apple, deal with it immediately. In the moment, stop what you're doing, talk to it, speak to it, stop it, carry on, next. And then that team just goes, because they all ultimately are watching every movement, positive or negative, and we all misstep. It happens. But I think what you deal and what you say, how you deal with it and what you say in the moments, I apologize. My bad. I misstepped, guys. As a team huddle in a team meeting, lay yourself out there. The minute that you say, I made a mistake, is the minute that they lean in a little bit more, and then reroute it and find a way to make it right. Because the vulnerability as leadership, it just creates that much more trust within your team that they can come to you when they have vulnerable moments, when they make mistakes. Because if you can say that you made a mistake in your leadership power, manager, leaders, assistant managers, even just a lead, it allows those individuals to come to you and show their vulnerabilities. And ultimately you make changes to make your organization that much stronger. And for me, it's been a long road, for sure, bumps along that road, but ultimately successful.
Unbelievable. Okay, that sounds amazing. So does anybody have any questions? Because really going through the challenges at this point in time after the message you've given us is irrelevant, because the message you've given us is look at yourself and look at what you're doing, open the communication, find out their whys. I want to share something. I want to show everybody something quickly. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So LeAnne, have a look at this, and everybody who is attending. This is what we cover in our staff module of our entire business management training. Remember, I spoke to you about that. We do this management training that's sort of ongoing. It never ends, really. But this is what we cover, and exactly what you're speaking into. Like there's one there called effective communication, personality profiling, staff meetings that everyone wants to attend, performing praise sandwiches. You just spoke about it. You named it something else. We've called it a praise sandwich. Managing conflicts and complaints. The therapist 5-point growth plan, that talks back to your, what did you call it? Internship program. So figuring out, where do they want to grow? How do they want to grow? How can we help fuel you? And then a mindset shift. So I think that if everybody on this call had to sort of fall back onto what is already available to them, plus take what you've said as a really, I mean, it's quite a tough thing to hear. It is, because if I laid out my staff challenges and you've just told me what you've told me, you've basically told me I'm the problem. That's what you've said, which is a hard thing to hear, but it's Absolutely. A good thing to hear, because now we can make changes and we can make differences. And if you're sitting here in front of us, okay, I'm going to stop sharing that now. Everybody's had a look at that. But if you've managed to get this right, there's no reason why the rest of us on this call can't get it right. Correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for me being a stubborn, super passionate, my way or the highway kind of girl, I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I think you just have to start. Doesn't need to be big, doesn't need to be bold. It just needs to be 1 foot forward with that thought process. I mean, for me, I think take the time to invest in yourself, whether it's reading like a Simon Sinek sort of situation, starting with the why, that book is very inspirational, with evaluating yourself, turn it on yourself. What do you do? How do you do? How are you coached? Look at yourself with your leadership, start there, and then mirror that down. and if I think you can lead that way, you'll be extremely successful in your operation.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Does anybody have any questions that they want to directly ask? How would you deal with X, Y, and Z? Now's your chance, everyone. We have LeAnne here. We have her precious time. So ask away, everyone. Let's hear. You can type it if you're too shy to unmute, or you can unmute and chat. Okay, that must mean that you've really hit home, right? Do you still use a mentor? So Shani's asking, do you still use a mentor and further your education and leadership?
Absolutely. I try to find one in every organization I go to. Particularly, it just gravitationally just normally seems to point itself out. I think as human nature, you just tend to move towards the person you most want to emulate. But absolutely, I have a couple that are from previous companies that were very monumental for me. We stay in touch via LinkedIn. We don't talk as much as we used to, as we both have grown in our careers, but I also utilize a lot of my girlfriends, as much as they may not have industry experience or may not be my boss, just having a voice to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm doing. As a human to human, would you like to hear this if you were my employee? Or does this approach make sense? And then they give me a lot of insightful feedback from a human to human perspective. So just sharing your communication is important.
Brilliant. So Samantha's asking you a question, which we at Spa Professionals Guild have the answer to, but maybe you can also have one. If you've got a template on your one-on-ones, some of the questions that you ask at on your one-on-ones.
Yeah, it's actually a unique question. So I was the COO of a real estate company for a while during the pandemic because spa wasn't a thing. And so the challenge that they gave me is they have no template. So none. You as the leader, you just sit in your chair and not say anything. So welcome them, ask them how they're doing. How's your day today? And then go like this. It's your floor. And then physically stop talking, which is enormously difficult. Don't lead them. Don't give them an opportunity. Don't guide them. So nope, nothing. This is your time. Whether you want to sit in silence or you want to chat or share work-related personal life, mix it in to your very programmed one-on-one template that I do also have, so that you have potentially either alternating one-on-ones, or you maybe have a touch base and a significant one-on-one to where you're talking about all the performance pieces, you're talking about your culture, what is your company culture? What is your company brand? What is your strategies that way? What are your standards? Those are all one-on-ones that you can absolutely graft, and I do have those. But ultimately, my challenge to you guys with this topic is to have a conversation where you say nothing and they say everything.
So let's try that. Let's try that. So we've got actually two templates, because the one is a one-on-one where it's a personal thing. So it's not a business related one-on-one where you're asking questions. What is your favorite thing about working here? What would you change if you were the manager? Like those kind of questions. And then there is a different type of one-on-one, which is more of a performance review, because that's a different conversation altogether. But I love your challenge, and I'd like to challenge all of you on this call to do a one-on-one. Sure, that would be so hard for me, but I'm going to try it, where you zip it completely and you let them talk, and you sit with a pen and paper and just write or record and listen and see what happens. I love that.
Yeah, it is much harder than it sounds.
Oh, yeah, for me, it would be almost.
But the really cool part is you have no idea where that conversation is going to go. And you'll be surprised at how much of a roller coaster of emotion you can get through when people have the floor without challenge. There's no yeah buts. There's no let me tell you how it is. It's just, thank you so much for that feedback. I appreciated our time together today.
Love it.
Let them go.
Love it, love it. Okay, anybody else? We've reached the end of our session, but if you've got one more question before you please put in your comments about, give LeAnne some feedback since you're not unmuting. Type it in, tell her how you feel. In fact, why don't you share with LeAnne what your next step is going to be? What are you going to do next after today's session? And what was your best takeaway from today? So let's hear. Thanks, Marisa. I didn't do much, Lena. Actually, I did nothing. LeAnne did it all, but it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Shani appreciates your time. Kajal says a very insightful discussion. I totally loved it. Definitely going to sit with a few of my therapists and have a conversation. Okay, there we go. Just remember, Aravind, you got to maybe staple your mouth, hey? So it's them talking and not you, which is quite difficult for leaders. It's difficult. Okay, who else? Come, everybody. Give LeAnne some feedback before we say goodbye. He says, I'll try my best on that. Okay, let's have some more feedback, everybody, before we say goodbye. And then, of course, you can always catch the recording. Karen saying thank you. Incredible to hear your story. So many takeaways. I'm going to be quiet and listen. Nice. Samantha sent a message on her group and told them I would ask them the why question tomorrow. Nice. So you're getting them to think about it overnight. Well done, Sam. Because sometimes when you put them on the spot,
yeah,
it's like, oh, I don't know what my why is. So good. Well done, Sam. Speed of implementation. I love it. Any more? What are you going to be doing after today? Cara, love it. Thank you. I am going to try just that. Lorato, very insightful. Like you say, communication is key. Since I involved them in decision-making, I can see there is improvement.
Awesome.
So I loved what you said. Give them a voice. I love that. Absolutely love that. And another lesson I learned from today, everybody, that I'm going to start saying from now on is don't sell, educate. That's what we're going to tell our staff from now on. They're not selling to make target. They're educating to get there.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Okay, Michelle, look within and be a better listener. Oh, that's nice, Michelle.
So
sounds
good.
awesome. Okay, any more feedback before we say goodbye? Because LeAnne, thank you so much. I cannot wait. I hope that I get to meet you next year. I'm going to go to ISPA and I'm going to pray that you're going to go.
Absolutely. I will be there.
Okay, because I cannot wait to meet you. It's going to be awesome to see you in person and give you a big hug.
Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure. I appreciate all of you showing up today. It's been a bucket list for sure, an opportunity to speak to you all. And I wish you all the best.
Love it. Okay, everybody, have the most beautiful day if it's your morning. And for me, it's almost evening. Have the most beautiful evening for the rest of you. And we'll see you all again very soon. Lots of love to you all. Thanks, LeAnne. Lots of love and big hugs to you.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.